Today, we are going to be ranking every Valorant agent from easiest to most difficult to master. And I know this can be a subjective topic since everyone has their own learning curve and playstyle, but some agents just generally do take longer to learn or get used to. But of course, feel free to leave your list in the comments if you'd like to share your thoughts on the topic as well. Now, at the top of our list, we have Sage, the mother of all. Now, I know what you're thinking here, and before you say Grim Walls, no, that doesn't count. The man's just too crazy finding the best ways to exploit Sage's wall, which is not necessary to master the agent. Anyway, Sage's role as a sentinel is a humble and straightforward one. Wall off unguarded areas, slow entry points, and heal teammates. And if you're able to do that on top of clicking some heads, then that's pretty much it. You've done your duty. Now, I'm sure a lot of newbie players in Valorant can relate to how comforting it is to pick up Sage early on, and I believe it's related to her spot on this very list. Number 2 goes to Raina, the go-to duelist to insta-lock. Now, some may argue that the timing of using Dismiss or Devour can be tricky or that placement of Leer needs some practice. But honestly, what you need to master most to use Raina effectively is your general in-game mechanics, such as crosshair placement, combat movement, and the like. And guess what? You need to learn these things anyway, regardless of the agent. Now, among all the duelists, Raina is the easiest to master because your aim is what matters the most. Plus, you don't need to worry about blinding your allies whenever you flash, so it's almost foolproof. Brimstone takes the third spot for being a beginner-friendly controller. 1, his smokes are easy to deploy, and the activation is wide plus straightforward to navigate. 2, just throw your stim beacon on the floor and you can support the entire team's execute. 3, you have a long-lasting and powerful molly that doesn't require complex lineups. And finally, your ult has a huge area of effect that's also easy to activate. No need to worry about not having lineups. Brimstone and any other agents can function as a powerhouse even without these. But if you do decide to go that route, you barely have to spend a day to learn some simple ones and you are good to go. Now, before we go any further into this, if you feel like you've been struggling in ranked recently, then we have got a huge treat for you. Over at SkillCapped, we have recently published a brand new Calm Aim course that details how any one of you could develop Radiant level aim in just a few weeks. Now, while most players just aim in whatever way feels comfortable to them, it might surprise you to hear that there is actually a proper aiming technique that pros use to not only make themselves a little bit more consistent, but to also help them get more kills like this. Now, in our course, we're going to teach you this proper technique, and we're also going to even provide you with an aim training routine that you can use to instantly start improving your aim and climbing today. Unlike other routines, this is a simple, less than 15-minute exercise that you can do before you play that will do wonders for your aim. Not only that, but our site is literally backed by a rank improvement guarantee. So if you don't climb, you don't pay. If you're really looking to climb this act and you want to actually start fragging out in your matches, do be sure to check out our new Calm Aim course using the link below. Now, while this may be considered a hot take for some, I believe Gekko is one of the easiest agents to master, coming in at number 4. Now, there might be some initial intimidation from the Pokemon gang here, but once you get past that, you're practically ready to dominate. Gekko is the only flashing initiator that can't blind their allies, so you can worry less about its activation. Now, as for utility placement, you're going to get used to it after a few tries till you figure out when you can make the most out of your util while being able to recover them. The kit is fairly simple, the mechanics are easy to get used to, the agent is a flexible initiator. That's all there is to it. For number 5, we have Clove, the undead controller. Clove's going to take a slightly higher spot than Brim because there's more complexity in using their kit. Pick-me-up's powerful, but it's not as bulletproof as Dismiss, but it makes up for it with that temporary HP replenish and movement speed boost. Metal is straightforward, you throw it and reap the rewards with your team. As for Ruse, its reach isn't as wide as Brim's, which can make it slightly trickier to place, but not so much. This is a perfect balance to Clove's ability to smoke after death. The ability to be aggressive as a controller makes Clove an easy pick because you're not limited to the concept of having to stay alive for as long as possible to get value out of your smokes. And if that's not enough, you can instantly revive yourself with your ult, giving an additional layer of security to that aggression. Killjoy lands at number 6, and before you start arguing here, hear me out. Learning Killjoy setups can be intimidating, but after studying them once, you can easily rinse and repeat. The point is to get the essence of your setup's purpose, whether it's to melt through enemies' HPs or cover multiple areas for intel. After that, you can already freestyle your way through maps based on how you see fit. Her overall complexity isn't too high a ceiling compared to other Sentinels, making KJ a fairly suitable pick for those learning the ropes of becoming a side anchor Sentinel. At number 7, we have Chamber, and while some of you might think he also just relies on gunplay like Raina, well, there's actually more than meets the eye here. Yes, your highlight arsenal is his headhunter and tour de force, but his stationary setups are what adds a layer of difficulty here. His trademark has a limited range, so if you're looking to gain info from where it's placed, you need to consider your positioning on the map. Same goes with Rendezvous. As much as it's a get-out-of-jail-free card, you have a brief moment of vulnerability after teleporting. The fact that you have to take these aggressive fights and angles, teleport away and reset your aim, and prepare for the next fight to gain value from your kit, all while under pressure, is what puts Chamber a bit higher on this list. But other than that, you have free guns to work with, whether as your main course weaponry or a backup plan throughout rounds. If you learn how to aim and peek angles, which is a necessity, then you're going to do just fine with the agent. Phoenix at number 8 will always remain as a solid comfort pick across ELO in my book. He has a forgivable learning curve, given how many players take time learning his flash mechanics and wall placements. But other than that, his self-sufficiency and accessible ult make him an easy-to-pick-up duelist who's also fun to play. The ability to recover HP is a nice layer of security to rely on for longevity in rounds, and no, that doesn't mean you should depend on it, but having that available can be the difference maker between clutching or losing the round. The best part about it, his wall can heal, damage enemies, and block vision. His molly can heal and damage enemies. Multi-purpose utilities, they are the way to go. In the 9th spot is ISO, the agent who shines best at isolating fights. He's another agent who kind of relies on aim if you'd like to keep that shield running. But on top of that, utility usage and placement matter a lot, and while ISO's undercut is overpowered, given enemies the suppress and vulnerable debuff, it can also hit your allies. It's a small thing to consider, but at the same time, you need to constantly exercise awareness if you don't want to sabotage your team. There's also the activation of his wall, which can be thrown in full or medium speed, and this forces the player to really think of how to use it depending on the situation to gain the most value. Other than that, he's still not as complex as other agile duelists, so he sits in this comfortable spot. Next up is Breach, one of the esteemed masters of crowd control in Valorant. With this agent, utility placement is key, and you're going to be acting as a support most of the time. Using his kit isn't necessarily complicated. In fact, he has one of the easiest flashes to use among the initiators. What makes him tricky is learning how to time your utilities and where to place them so your team can capitalize. Breach, and I can't stress this enough, isn't a selfish player, so it's really going to come down to how you layer your utility with the team. Skye takes the 11th spot in our list, and while she got overshadowed by the util dump meta, she remains a solid initiator. Now, while her kit is fairly simple, there's a bit of a learning curve to her guiding light. I mean, you could still gain value from typical pop flashes behind walls and out of smokes, but eventually, you're going to need the longer-lasting blind. And the thing about her blinds is they don't replenish, so you're really going to have to make it matter. As far as her other utilities are concerned, nothing too much to worry about. It's mainly the guiding light that really kicks her level of difficulty up a notch, and honestly, it's also kind of her bread and butter, so it's understandable. On number 12, we have Tejo, who honestly could have been a little bit lower on this list if it weren't for his nerfs. Since his guided salvo isn't as lethal as it was before, careful planning and placement are an absolute must. That is, if you don't want to waste 150 credits worth of powerful missiles. Furthermore, since the activation range is decreased, positioning can get tricky. Special delivery also requires a bit of angling if you want to maximize it, but no biggie there, it's learnable. You also need to get used to placing Armageddon correctly and getting the timing right, but since it covers a massive area, it is a little bit more manageable. Overall, Tejo is in a weird place right now, fallen from a great height long after his release, but there's still a ton of value to be found from this once extremely overpowered agent. In 13, we have Harbor, who's also currently the least picked agent. Harbor's kit isn't too bad, but his ability to smoke and cover angles can feel limited. And that's also why he can be tricky to use and master. You're going to have to learn how to navigate your high tide as you draw it on your minimap, and there's a level of precision you need to meet if you want to cover the site securely. Since the wall also starts from Harbor's current location, there's not much flexibility for deploying it, making positioning more difficult. You'll also have to consider that your High Tide and Cascade can also slow teammates, so again, not too beginner-friendly. Other than that, Cove is pretty useful and Reckoning is a powerful ult. If waterbending's your thing, then you might fancy this agent. 14 goes to Jett, and while her kit is easy to explain, it's tricky to pull off effectively in unison. Jett is one of the most agile agents there is, and if you're not fast-paced and proactive, then you're going to have a hard time with this agent. There are a lot of movement combos you can do with Cloudburst, Tailwind, and Updraft, and it's honestly a necessity if you want to dominate with Jett. Not to mention Jett's Bladestorm. It's an extremely powerful ult that bypasses movement error, but in a tactical shooter that forces you to stay still to be accurate, it's going to contradict your muscle memory. And to make the most out of Bladestorm, you need to keep moving while adjusting your crosshair. Whether that's by land or air, steep learning curve, yes. The rewards, absolutely insane. Right next to Jett, we have Raze, and we're going to have to put her a spot higher because her movement is a bit more complex. Paint shells are straightforward and easy to use. Boombot requires a bit of angling if you want to clear corners without exposing yourself. But her satchels are where the action comes from. While you don't need to be like Ray for C or Jing with the satchels, it's best to get acquainted to the basics. And honestly, the basic of satcheling can be quite tricky and intimidating, especially in game. For one, there's this animation cancel trick you can do by pressing the satchel key, your ult, activating the first satchel, and going for a second satchel to do a seamless aerial showstopper. Overall, there is a lot of advanced mechanics you have to learn to maximize Raze's potential. And while it can be a tough road to conquer, this agent will make it worth your while with her explosive tech. Next up is Omen, one of the most intimidating controllers to pick up for beginners. If you take a look at mid to high elo, you're going to find that Omen is a staple go-to. His Paranoia is a very useful and supportive tool built for controlling areas and strengthening side executes. But placement and timing are key, plus you can also hit your allies if you're not careful, so it's something you really need to practice a bit. You're also going to need to have general knowledge on the different landscapes of the map you're playing, so you can do multiple types of smoke placements, including one-ways. However, what kicks Omen up a notch in the list of difficulty is using his Shadow Step effectively. Since it gives you a brief window of vulnerability and reveals your location through sound cues, you need to be smart with how you use it. One of the common combos is the Paranoia plus Shadow Step sequence. This tech is as stylish as it is effective when done correctly, but it does need a lot of practice. But if you put enough work in, Omen is going to be one of the most fun controllers you can play in the game. Fade is one of those agents that heavily rely on lineups to gain massive value. Haunt is a powerful recon tool that really shines if it's thrown in unexpected places, hence, lineups. But once you learn the lineups, you basically have them for life. Same goes with her C's, which is an insane utility for team fights. Prowler also requires a bit of practice if you want to maximize its use. It has unique mechanics that require you to hold the mouse button as you navigate the Prowler, so it's not something you can really master on the fly. On the 18th spot is Kayo, who has the closest flash mechanics to CS. If you're a CS player, you're going to feel right at home with Kayo's flash. Now, unfortunately, not a lot of Valorant beginners have that CS background, making his flash mechanics a bit difficult to learn. You're probably going to end up flashing yourself and your team a whole lot before you can get the hang of it. But thanks to the sound indicator update to his flash, you're going to get a warning when it's about to pop after being thrown against a surface. Other than that, Kayo's kit is pretty self-explanatory and easy to learn, but mastering Kayo requires utmost discipline in throwing flashes to make them as effective as possible in team fights. In 19, we have Deadlock, which a lot of people seem to get intimidated by. She's not your average sentinel who can always give you info if there's a flank, but she's honestly not for that purpose. Her sonic sensors need strategic placements to gain value, whether it's for post-plant or site anchoring. Placing them randomly and without thought will make them predictable and easy to destroy. Therefore, it's a must to read into the enemy's tendencies and nuances to gain value out of the traps. Her ult also needs some angling to connect, and it's going to take some time to get used to. Other than that, Deadlock is a solid sentinel capable of stalling enemies and getting an instant freebie when you have Annihilation active. Now, when it comes to movement, Neon is likely the toughest duelist to master. In essence, Sprint is straightforward, but applying it in-game with gunplay does require a lot of practice. Not to mention the inclusion of her slide whenever you take duels and enter sight. Learning a bit of lineups is also necessary for Relay Bolt to gain massive value, but you can learn this through experience as you go through the different maps' landscapes. Once you pop Overdrive, you're going to incorporate constant sprinting, jumping, and sliding, all while tracing the enemy's heads if you want to actually land kills. Neon's not for the faint-hearted, so if you want to pick her up, better put in the hours. Cipher is one of the best sentinels to lurk with and anchor sites, and he's the only agent who can cover or gain info from up to 3 sites or areas due to the limitless range of his traps. Learning the different setups is the trickiest part of mastering Cipher, especially since his tripwires are heavily dependent on the map's landscape. If there's no vertical wall to cling on, you won't be able to place the tripwire, and of course, you don't want to keep recycling the same setups every round, so you're really going to have to study a lot of setups to be a good Cipher main. The same goes with finding the right lineups for your camera placement and maybe even one-ways for your cages. If you don't have the time to learn multiple setups, then Cipher definitely ain't for you. For number 22, we have Viper, the pseudo-sentinel controller. Honestly, she used to be a much simpler agent to learn and use, but because you can't recall your poison orb and wall, you're going to need to really think ahead with your team's strategy before committing these utilities. You need to consider the map's landscape in order to place your wall effectively, as well as determine its purpose, whether it's for distraction, lurking, or the main smoke for the side execute. Down the road, you'll also need to learn some smoke orb lineups depending on the map you're playing. Overall, there's a lot to consider when playing Viper, regardless of whether she's a solo or secondary controller. This also makes her a great lurk because you can activate your wall and orb from anywhere, but if you die prematurely, then those are gone. Number 23 goes to Sova, and for those of you who have tried him for the first time, I'm sure you know what I mean here. Not only is Sova an intimidating agent to pick, but there's actually quite a steep learning curve to his tech as well. For starters, Recon Dart requires you to learn a few lineups on different maps to gain more value, and that's not to say you can't use it effectively without lineups, but it's going to become easily predictable and less valuable as you progress. And similarly, shock darts do require a bit of geometry, if you may, so getting used to its trajectory can take some time before you get comfortable. There's also some wonkiness to the owl drone for the first few tries, but should be manageable with some practice. And understandably, Sova's Hunter's Fury can also be quite difficult to land, so patience is really key. Next up is Vise, currently the toughest Sentinel to master, but also one of the most rewarding. The current meta with Sentinels make use of delaying tactics to pressure the attackers into working with little to no time. And at the top of the list of the best stalling agents, Vise takes the crown. However, learning various setups for this agent can be a daunting task. Sooner or later, you're going to need to be creative with your wall and razor vine placements so as not to lose their value. Remember that she shines best on stalling, so cycling her traps is a must to keep the enemies on their toes. Vise's flash can also feel a bit weird to use aggressively since there's a short setting up period before you can use it, and it can often get destroyed quickly. Nevertheless, she's at the top of her game and is an agent worth picking up. To this date, a lot of players dread picking up Ashe, and I don't blame them. For a tactical shooter, she does have a lot going on. Sometimes it can feel like you're playing a MOBA game whenever using her because of the amount of buttons you need to be pressing in quick succession. But this is exactly why she's always been a reliable controller for mid to high elo. It's just that you have to really practice the utility of your speed placement, activation, and map awareness to make the most of her kit. It's also the cycling in and out of the astral form that make it difficult for many players, and the number of times people get caught in the Indian seed is nearly uncountable. Be that as it may, Astra is a very fun agent to use once you get the hang of placing stars and her cosmic divide. Taking the second to the last spot is Wayle, our newest addition to the Duelist roster. Waylay's learning curve is one of the steepest, not just because she just got released. Her mobility, which mainly comes from light speed, brings a new mechanic that's not quite the same as Jett's dash. Plus, the combination of vertical and horizontal dashes in succession requires a ton of practice to land properly. And you also have to consider the landscape of the map you're playing. So there's that. If you do it without much thought, you're going to end up in an awkward and vulnerable position, or it's going to force you to refract back, easily removing almost all of your utilities. Another tricky part of Wayle is getting used to how her saturate works. Sure, it follows the same trajectory as a Phoenix Molly, but for some reason there's no equip time or alt fire. Once you press the key, it just automatically throws the utility where you're aiming your crosshair without so much as a warning. And since she's the only agent who has this mechanic, it's going to mess with your muscle memory a little bit. Not quite sure if this is intended, but it is awkward and can get tricky to get used to. And finally, at the top of our list, we have the trickster himself, Yoru. Yoru has been making a huge name for himself in the pro scene as well as in ranked, albeit slowly. But it's understandable. Learning him requires a lot of patience and creativity. You're going to end up dying more than you'd like after TPing before you can get the hang of it. Careful planning is going to be necessary if you want to achieve that seamless flash and TP combo, especially if you don't want to end up dead or blinding yourself and your allies. Yoru's maximum potential can only be reached by those who are willing to really think 5 steps ahead. And in my personal opinion, it's a worthwhile journey. Yoru's an insanely powerful agent who deserves the love and attention he's currently getting in and out of pro play. And I guarantee that a lot of Yoru mains will more than agree. Alright though guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little bit more about SkillCapped. So we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and we think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. Because we've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium Valorant guides on the internet. We add new courses every month with over 1,000 guides curated into over 50 courses. No one can compare. We also have a direct line of communication with subscribers in our Discord so that you can get connected immediately to some of the best players in the game who will respond to every question you ask. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you're serious about improving your game. So that's going to be all for this one today, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.